Hey, buddies. Future buddies. It's cool to meet all of you. Meeting people is pretty cool, isn't it? And I don't mean just like meeting people, but meeting people, right? So like whatever I am, all this stuff, this personality, persona, all the stuff I've brought with me throughout the years, you know, stuff I've welcomed, collected, rejected, all that, where all of that kind of stops or ends and where your perception begins or where it really overlaps. That's really what like this moment is, right? So it's pretty fascinating because we're just pretty much a bundle of sensors walking around with this processor like a multi-core processor. It's always working. It's kind of enigmatic, right? How all that stuff happens, and it's always working. It's even working to suppress stuff that's coming in, which we know, right? But we usually think about, no, it's coming up with my thoughts, all these decisions that I'm making, but it's actually working even more so to hold stuff back, things that are coming in and you don't want to pay attention to it right now. Maybe it's the stuff that happened this morning. Maybe you got into a thing with your significant other. Maybe you're already thinking about the project that's coming up after this. Those are things that you have to quiet for that moment to present yourself, to be your natural self. And it's tough to quiet those things because the brain's always working, like I said. And right up front here, we have the prefrontal cortex. It's making all the decisions. And we make decisions all day long. And I don't mean just when somebody asks you a question. I mean, I'm making a decision right now. I made a decision yesterday to change my entire speech. It was a really smart idea. But it's only 7 minutes, so I got to do it in like this compressed time. I'm talking about neuroscience in 7 minutes. I'm going to consult my notes. So this prefrontal cortex, we actually call it the executive region. We really have two CEOs in our executive region, the left brain and the right brain. And what you hear about those two regions is true, you know, like the critical thought on this side and the creative thought on this side. But nobody's really just a whole right brain person or a whole left brain. We use both. In fact, we've actually mapped, Dr. Nardi and I, through his research. I'm just learning, by the way. I'm a student. I'm teaching as a student, which is what I love. We've mapped all the regions of the brain, and those are largely responsible for different cognitive functions, different emotional processing, all that kind of thing. So we can actually see when those things are happening with this technical device, the EEG. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's just measuring little impulses along the scalp. This ionic current is detectable. All these different types of waves are going on, and this EEG is like a radio, so we can tune into just one or another and listen to that. And then it makes these visuals. I'm not really using this too much. It's fine with you, right? You don't really want to see all this stuff. It's kind of boring. But we can parse these out and see them as waves. And then we can see which region they're lighting up in. And so in the prefrontal cortex, this part up here that we're using to make all these decisions, most of the day it's beta waves. And so beta waves are just kind of like active, I'm alert, I'm awake, hopefully. And we have a range of waves from gamma. It goes gamma, beta, alpha, theta, delta. And those are like fastest to slowest. Delta is when you're pretty much asleep. Actually, I'm sorry. It is when you're asleep. And so the alpha wave is when you're pretty much awake. The gamma wave is super fast. It's crazy. I don't even want to get into it right now. The alpha wave, though, the beta wave is when you're awake. Alpha wave is when you're actually like meditating. So when you've quieted. And the theta wave is a very interesting wave. It's when you're using kind of intuitive thought. If that shows up when you're actually awake, so when you're doing this kind of almost magical thing, it's just really cool. And so the left brain, right brain, like I said, we've mapped it to these different regions. So the left brain right up front is actually responsible for focusing and actually also looking for positive outcomes, like kind of bypassing the other ones. The right brain, that creative brain, is used for staying open, exploring. And so that's actually how we get to a creative, decision or idea, is that we're actually considering all of the stuff. We're not just looking for a positive outcome. It could be something negative or something that you just think is irrelevant, right? And then that's when you connect them. And that gamma wave, that weird one I was talking about, that's actually a wave that connects other things. And so it actually makes different parts of your brain work together at a specific moment. So yeah, during the waking hour, the beta waves are present, different times, different regions, different people even. Different people, like when you meet different people, they actually excite different parts of your brain. That's really cool. You think about it as magnetism, and that's pretty cool. But the fact that someone might actually light up a different part of your brain. You might hear somebody that you've heard 1,000 times, and you're just almost like total alpha wave, almost like you're meditating. And then something comes along and ding, sparks something else. It's really cool. But really the coolest mystery that we actually can see scientifically is flow state. And that's elusive thing, right, that some people just chase. They can actually get into it, and so they're always trying to get there. Athletes can do it when they're really in the flow, right? And some people say in the zone. I think in the zone really means like I'm focused, leave me alone. I'm really concentrating. I'm using all this prefrontal cortex up here. And guess what? If you're in beta wave state and you're really focused too long, that's when stress happens, anxiety, even eventually PTSD, all that stuff. And so we can actually see flow state happen in the brain. It's very interesting because a lot of creatives rely on this. Bob Dylan was famous for talking about environment is very important. And he would get into this environment that was conducive to him. And someone might say, well, how long did it take you to write that song? He said, well, my best songs, the ones that I think were the best that just flowed, how long did it take me to write them? As long as it took me to write them down. It just came to him because he was in that flow. What is flow? When we see it actually happen on the EEG, there's this peak of alpha wave state, and I said that's what's present when you're meditating. Well, also, that meditative state can happen when you're actually doing something that you know very well, maybe that you've mastered, right? So this whole jack of all trades things, I love that. But you really need to master something so that you can actually do it without thinking, that's what they say. So you can move naturally. So you have that alpha wave going, right, when it's like a meditative state. And something interesting happens, and it requires something new and different, something that's a challenge, some new challenge. And when you actually take that on, you don't switch back when you're in that flow to that prefrontal cortex making decisions. You actually just do it intuitively. And that's when it moves into a theta wave. So it's in that alpha, right between the alpha and the theta wave, that we're actually in flow state. You don't go too far to theta because then you're just daydreaming. You don't go back to alpha because then you're just doing rote tasks. It's in that flow. It really literally flows. So like Joseph Campbell would say, it's following your bliss. It's like when you see or hear or do things that just kind of come naturally. Kind of easier said than done, right? But yeah, it requires you to actually shut down that prefrontal cortex a little bit. The other thing that's fascinating actually about flow state is something very interesting happens. Remember I was talking about that meeting and what you bring to that moment. Your personality and your persona and the self. Well, when you're in flow, there's a very specific part of your prefrontal cortex, the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. It's a really big mouthful. It's responsible for the inner critic, for impulse control. That actually goes away in flow state. So you actually lose the self and you're just doing. You're just figuring stuff out and you're just doing. So in order to get into flow, we say, you've got to almost quiet down, get meditative, find something that you can do masterfully, and then always keep challenge, something new and something different. And then that dorsolateral prefrontal cortex has to go away. So to get into creative flow, we have to actually quiet that. Some people, you probably don't want that impulse control to turn off. So, in fact, there's probably a lot of people right now, you'd like that thing. You'd be like, you ever heard the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex? Well, I'd like you to know about it. That would be really great. So at any rate, this now counting up? This is my overtime. I'm 2 minutes over. Okay, cool. Well, that's all the time I have for talking about neuroscience. Yeah, I won't even get into transient hypofrontality and all that fun stuff and whatever this is and that and that and that and that. Yeah, that, yeah. Anyway, there we go. So thank you very much. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you, Christopher. That was like a master's in 7 minutes. Thanks. So, all right, our next mystery speaker is Ryan Gerard. He is the artistic director at Agatha's Murder Mystery Dinner Theater. Yeah, hometown hero. Okay, Ryan has been an actor in Atlanta for 15 years. He began acting after he got a degree in Spanish and business, and then he decided he hated working. He was hired in 2000 to be a member of Laughing Matters, the Southeast's longest-running improv troupe, and never looked back. So he is at Agatha's, and he's been there for almost a decade, and he's been happily entertaining audiences ever since. And he's also a freelance creative director and has had the opportunity to write and direct shows for CEOs of Home Depot, Oracle, Microsoft, and many others, and he tries desperately to make business executives sound like they have a sense of humor. So let's welcome Ryan Gerard to the stage.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on after the friggin' brain guy. Now welcome Captain Yuck Yuck and his merry band of idiots. Thank you. All right. So I am creative director of Agatha's A Taste of Mystery. By round of applause, how many of you have ever been to a show at Agatha's A Taste of Mystery? How many of you have never, by round of applause, been to a show at Agatha's A Taste of Mystery? How many of you who have been to a show wish you had never been to a show at Agatha's A Taste of Mystery? Okay, good. One person. That's cruel. All right, so Agatha's, we've been around since 1988, and that is long for a dinner theater. We have outlasted a lot of dinner theaters, and there's a couple of reasons why that I hope to get into most of them. But we used to be, the first thing everybody always asks about Agatha's if you are from Atlanta is, hey, weren't you guys across from the Fox Theater? And yes, we were. That was where we were born, where we lived for a long time, right across from the Fox Theater. And that's important because it kind of legitimized us as a theater. We were on Atlanta's Broadway, if you will. We were right across from the Fox Theater. So you could go see a show at the Fox. You see it professionally done, light, sound, amazing, watching a show with the amazing Bernadette Peters. And then you walk right out and you take a left and you can come see a show at Agatha's where we made fun of the amazing Bernadette Peters. That's kind of what we do. We make fun of a lot of things. We try to have fun. The mystery of Agatha's is we write comedy mystery theater shows. We're not mystery writers. We don't know how to write good mysteries. We know how to write good comedies. So we make fun of a lot of things. My history of acting has barely a history. I didn't study acting in high school or college. I played baseball at Augusta, and I played there for 3 years, and then I decided I didn't want to do that anymore because I didn't like baseball and people were yelling at me, so I decided not to do that. So I became a bookie in Agatha's, in Augusta, where I took people's money and then they made bets and I took it. It was nice. But after a year, I graduated with a Spanish and a business degree, and then I went and lived in Spain. I worked over there, and then I came back here, and I did a call center where I got yelled at in Spanish by people who weren't happy with their cell coverage, and then that's when I decided this sucks. So I started being creative, and I took an improv comedy class with Laughing Matters, and they hired me, and then I wanted to go work at Agatha's, A Taste of Mystery, because I had seen a show in 1998. And I remember thinking, that's cool. How do you get into Agatha's? And luckily, a couple of the people that worked with Laughing Matters, they worked at Agatha's. And I asked them, how do you get in there? And they said, someone has to die before you get into Agatha's. And I thought, that's unfortunate. So, because I don't kill people, and it's just a long time. So, but I went to shows there. I went to different shows, and I went to different dress rehearsals. And that's important because Agatha's works a little bit differently than the shows you might have seen anywhere else. We only have 4 different shows a year, and all of them are written specifically for Agatha's. If you've seen a show there, you've seen a show that's been written by someone who either works currently at Agatha's or has worked at Agatha's. And it's different because we only have 2 professional actors that perform in each show. Then during that show, there are 20 other people that stand up and read parts in that show. Audience members, just like yourself, who come in to have a good time, and then we accost them as they walk through our door. And we say, hey, welcome, you're going to be playing this guy. Congratulations, you have to read this. There's an accent. Good luck. Go to the bar. So that's what they do. But we have, and the reason that we're able to succeed is we do have the most talented writers and actors in this business. And I mean that seriously, and I know every other theater says that because they have to. You're not going to come to see a show. We have the 3rd tier actors in our, but we really do have talented people. We have 3 or 4 people who are currently and or past who have toured with the Second City that have worked for us. We have a guy who's in Stranger Things. Do you know Stranger Things? It's on Netflix? Yeah. The teacher, Randy Havens. He plays a teacher with the mustache. He works at Agatha's. He's been an actor around at Agatha's. He works at Agatha's. We're doing our next show at Agatha's is going to be a Stranger Things spoof, and we're hoping to get him to be in that show so he can literally spoof himself, which we've never done. We're very excited about. But we also have very talented people. One of our most famous alumni, there's 2 of our most famous, Gary Anthony Williams. He's a very good actor, hysterically funny actor who just played Bebop in the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. Then we have Amber Nash, who plays on Archer. She plays Pam Poovey. She works and or worked at Agatha's. Then we have Katie Nealand. She's just in this past show, who's a fantastic actress. She's in The Founder right now with Michael Keaton that's out. She plays his secretary. Huge. She's one of the best actresses in Atlanta. I'm not just saying that because she's my wife. No. I'm saying that because she told me to, and she is my wife. So... but she's fantastic. So, anyway, there's a different show every night. And what I mean by that is there's 20 people that stand up and say a few lines in our show. And that can create some problems. For one, you all are very nice and you seem literate. And that's what we hope for when people come into our show. Not even nice, just literate. So we hand them a part and we say, you read this. Now, that creates some problems because, as you know, people get nervous when they stand and speak in front of people. So they can be a little nervous, they can fumble some lines. That's one thing that could happen. The second thing is that they've come to have a good time and they get hammered. So they stand up and read drunk, and that can create some problems. Third is that they are functionally illiterate. Now, that creates a lot of problems because we're trying to do a mystery show where we're throwing out clues and very important things that you might need to listen for. And when someone can't read, it is the actors and actresses' job to make everyone understand what's going on and have fun doing it. And that's why we need the most professional, the best people, because we have that challenge every single night. Our show changes every single night because you never know what's going to happen. So the mystery of relevance is how do we stay relevant in our industry? And that's by doing shows, making fun of shows that are in the now. On the left, you see the show that we're currently doing, which is Once Upon a Murder. We're making fun of all of the fairy tales. We have the crazy hat lady. We have Peter Pecan flying in the background there. We make fun of different things. We also have RuPaul Stiltskin. That's what we do. This was our holiday show, It's a Wonderful Murder, and made fun of It's a Wonderful Life. That's what we do. We take different things and we twist them. Pirates of the Chattahoochee, stuff like that. And we have fun doing it. It's a lot of fun. We did the Reindeer Hunger Games for one of our holiday shows. It's just a lot of fun that we do, and that's how we try and stay relevant. People want to know what's going on and what's in the what's happening right now. So the mystery of advertising is we don't advertise. We never have in our history. We are for profit, but we're very small. We only seat 150 people. So ours has been word of mouth for almost 30 years. We've been able to succeed and thrive for almost 30 years. This was the holiday show a couple years back, which was Breaking Bad Christmas. And then we had Empire Records Strikes Back right there, where we made fun of Empire. And so our mystery is also the mystery of the husband. Generally, when you think of murder mystery dinner theaters, you don't get a lot of 30 to 40-year-old men go, hey, sweetie, you gonna go to a dinner theater this weekend? You just don't hear that a lot for most people. So we have to make the husbands laugh. That's my whole thing, is how do we get that guy to say, you know what? let's come back here because had a good time. And that's why we hire the best people and we have the best people, because we really do try and make everybody laugh until they can say, wow, this was actually funny, which is a direct quote that we hear 95% of the time when people leave. And then they go, you should really act for a living, after we've just acted for a living right in front of their faces. So that's Agatha's. If you haven't seen us, we'd love to come. We'd love to have you down there. Come look us. And again, we have a full bar. Thank you very much. That's my time.
Thank you, Ryan. That was, as they say in Tennessee, a hoot. All right, so our next mystery speaker, Amina Brown, is a friend of mine and a rock star. Let me read her quick bio. She's an author, spoken word poet, speaker, and event host. She's the author of 5 spoken word albums, including her most recent release, Amina Brown Live, and nonfiction books, Breaking Old Rhythms and How to Fix a Broken Record. She performs and speaks at events from coffee houses to arenas with a mix of poetry, humor, and storytelling. And her husband is DJ Opie Diggy. Where is he? There he is. He's like our official Creative Mornings DJ, so he is observing today and not playing. But yeah, they together often host the 5th Thursday open mic at Urban Grind Coffee. So let's give a huge round of applause for Amina Brown.
So this is my favorite picture of me probably talking in mid-sentence with my 2 grandmothers. On the left there, with the polka dots, is my great-grandmother, my Grandma Sudi, and in the middle is the grandma of all grandmas, the favoriteest grandma ever, my Grandma Bert, who is here today. Hey, Grandma. So when I was about 25, I realized I could only cook 3 things well: spaghetti, meatloaf, and brownies, which is not a bad thing, but it depends on how well-rounded you wanted your meals to be and how many choices you wanted to have. And as a Southern woman, it feels shameful that those are the only things that you know how to make. So I went to the expert. I went to my grandma and I said, Grandma, if the way to a man's heart is through his stomach, I'm not gonna get there like this. So you need to get in the kitchen with me and show me how to do something. So I go in the kitchen with her, and she shows me how to cook all the things a Southern woman should know: the collard greens, and the mac and cheese, and the cabbage, and the rutabagas. But my grandma has no recipes for any of this. You have to get in the kitchen with her. She has to show you what the batter is supposed to feel like when you're stirring it around, and how you know if the cabbage is too salty, and how you know if your macaroni is dry or not, right? She has to show me all those things, but she did, and I learned, and I got married, so shout out to Grandma. Well, later on, now that I'm married and my husband and I have our own house, I got my first KitchenAid mixer. And this is like a huge deal, as you know. It's like now I feel like I'm an official adult that I have this KitchenAid mixer sitting on my countertop. Whether I use it may not matter, just that it's sitting there. And I call my grandma and I say, Grandma, I'm turning 35, and I want you to come to my house and teach me the last things that I need to learn from you and your cooking repertoire, which are your cakes. My grandma had a tradition that whenever it was your birthday, all of us among the grandkids, you got to choose whatever cake she was going to make. She could make German chocolate cake. She could make coconut cake. She could make whatever cake it was that you said. And to me, there was mystery happening in my grandmother's kitchen. I mean, as a kid, you know, I'm going in the refrigerator and I'm seeing like half a gallon of buttermilk, and I go in the cabinet and see like 2 cups of flour and Vienna sausage. And somehow I went out to play and I came back and there's greens and yams and turkey and a 3-layer cake. And I don't know how a woman does that with a can of Vienna sausage. I haven't figured out where those Vienna sausage went. To me, my grandma's in the kitchen like clapping her hands with flour and glitter, and there's just all this mysterious magic happening in her kitchen somewhere. So I'm like, Grandma, come and teach me the things. Show me how to make this cake. And my grandma says, Mina, nah, I don't even know if I remember how to make that cake. You know, I haven't made a cake in 10 years. I'm like, Grandma, I bet you'll remember. Come to my house, we'll do it. She said, I gotta tell you something. You know I used to use a cake mix. So I don't know if you've ever felt your childhood dreams deflated. That was that moment for me. And she says, and I don't even know if they make the cake mix I used to use anymore. It was called Supermars. I'm like, what? What? I'm like, what is she saying? Mina, is called Supermars. What is that? I'm like, I'm trying to understand through your North Carolina accent what this means. And then my brain is going, what is this vintage special edition cake mix that they don't make anymore that my grandma was using to make all the mysterious magic in the kitchen? I got to go to Williams-Sonoma now. I got to go to Cook's Warehouse. I got to order this online. Do I have time? She says, Mina, you spell it Supermoist. In North Carolina language, super moist is what she was saying. Super Mars, that's super moist in North Carolina language. And if you're wondering, you can go anywhere and find this, any place that you would like to get it. So I say to my grandma, okay, we can fix this. We can fix this. I'll find a recipe online that's as close as I can get to your pineapple cake. And just come in my kitchen and help me make it from scratch. So we get in the kitchen together. We're hips to hips in there with the flour and all the baking powder and the salt. We're talking, we're laughing. And my grandma starts to remember some things, right? She remembers how you got to poke holes in the cake first after it's done before you put the pineapple filling in the middle so it can seep down into the cake. She's remembering all these things, and she tells me an older woman told me, just stop making the cakes from scratch. Just use the cake mix, make homemade frosting. Nobody will ever know. And clearly, no one of us in the family ever knew that this was the mystery behind why the cake was so awesome. So my grandma and I made a cake that day. That was my birthday. It was a very ugly cake, not because of grandma, just because I don't know what I'm doing. It tasted good, but it was very ugly. And I realized my grandma, all those years in her kitchen, she was teaching me something about the mystery of being creative. She was teaching me that it doesn't take a lot. You can take what you have and be creative. It doesn't take a new computer. It doesn't take all the money that it might seem like someone else has. You be creative with what you have. And she also was teaching me to never take that magic and that mystery for granted. Maybe there was cake mix involved, but there was still glitter, and there was still flour, and there was still this mystery that we still can't explain. Whatever it is that brings us all the ideas, right? Whatever that process is, we can't explain how creativity actually exists all the time. But we should lean into that mystery. It's in the fact that we don't know that makes us be more creative. And lastly, we get the honor and the privilege as creatives to make something sweet, to put love in it so other people can enjoy it. So shout out to Grandma. And shout out to Betty Crocker's cake mix. And shout out to the mystery of not knowing and being creative. Thank you.
Thank you, Amina. That was awesome. Okay, we're going to do a Q&A now with our three speakers. So if you guys want to come on up. And where's Molly? Or Molly, there you are. Hey, can you grab that microphone over there and run it down that aisle? Okay, so if y'all want to just come on stage, and if you have a question for these folks, we'll run a mic to you, and they'll try to answer. Should be tucked over that curtain over there.
Awesome. Cool.
Great. I know there's questions. If not, I'll ask one. Questions? Come on. Thank you, brave soul.
This question's for Ryan. Who died?
I'm not legally allowed to tell you who died, but it was someone's career. Hi. That was a joke. They're still thriving, I heard.
Oh, and then I was also curious where you're located now that you're not.
We are located now in Peachtree Center Avenue, which is right near the Hooters. Who doesn't know where the Hooters is downtown? That's what we say on the phone, right near the Hooters. It's right near Hard Rock Cafe downtown and the Hilton and all the rest of those. We're kind of in that general area now. That's where we are, and no one died. I promise.
Speaking of mystery, what has your art, your craft, or your profession allowed you to learn about yourself that you did not necessarily know you'd learn?
I'll start because I have this. So what I learned was that I'm pretty good at making people laugh, and that was the one thing that I knew I could do growing up. I had all kinds of other issues about what I was good at, and I was good at other things, but I never really enjoyed those things. So one thing I held on to was like, do what I love and do what I know I love. And I didn't know that I could make a living at that, but if I worked hard, and I've worked really hard to get there, I started succeeding, and there's no other thing I could do, so that's why I know I'm happy every single day. And I didn't know that was going to happen, because being an actor or a creative person in Atlanta, sometimes you didn't get the best jobs, and you have to work really hard, and sometimes you don't get appreciated. But if you are loving it yourself, then you gotta love that every single day. Who's next? Yep.
My previous career, I guess, and I still do freelance as creative director. I knew I liked to make things, and I think just like any creator, if you're not, you're probably not super happy if you're not creating. What I found in getting to move up into a creative director position is I really, really actually liked helping other people figure out how to create and figure out how to like bring that thing out of themselves. So that's kind of the mystery, the thing that I didn't expect, because I was an animator, and so animators, it's like this delayed gratification thing. So you like sit for hours looking at keyframes and move them and tweak them and change a bunch of stuff, and then you hit a button, you sit back, and you're sitting by yourself. And you're just like, da-da-da. Which was great, because actually when I started doing animation in college, none of the actors would show up when I did production. So as an animator, I could get assets into a thing, and they didn't go anywhere. It was great. Maybe I had a problem like enticing people. I don't know what it was. But yeah, so that was pretty cool. And with the neuroscience stuff is really about personality and helping people see something that's observable, a behavior, and aligning that to something that exists, somewhere else. And so helping them learn something about themselves. That's kind of the mystery that was revealed.
I would say for me, I learned I'm more of a creature of routine than I am spontaneity. I think as a poet, I always wanted to thrive on variety, and I can't create like that. I have to have my John Coltrane jazz. I have to do my free write so I can write about my insecurities and how this will probably suck what I'm about to write. I have to handwrite and not type my first drafts. And I just had to give in to that, and that it's okay that I can be creative and also have habit, if that makes sense.
This maybe it'll kind of tie everything together. Chris, you kind of talked about flow states. Can you all talk about how you get yourselves into a flow state? Because it's kind of a mystery.
You might have to start first, because I need to explain again the flow state.
You just talked about it. You were like, I need this, and I need this, and get the environment right. So for me, I tend to kind of like overload and think about a lot of the different things and pull all that stuff in. So I actually started a meditation practice a couple of years ago. And so for me, I really have to quiet all of the rest of the stuff very intentionally. So I started a meditation practice. And I don't do like crazy transcendental meditation or any kind of thing that's real woo-woo, even though I feel like I'm getting more woo-woo every year of my life. But it really is about like flooding the conscious mind with a bunch of things. I literally like visualize almost this this hallway of images, and I consider only 2 related things at a time, and then go to the next until it kind of slows down, and then just go into nothing. And so it's given me more of a meditative state through life, I feel like, and hopefully the others around me agree. But that's where I start, and then get into doing something that I love. So
Here's how I know he's 3 billion times smarter than me. I turn on a sound machine. It's just like, and I'm sure it does all that stuff that he's talking about. I just could never say it that well. I just sit upstairs and turn on a sound machine, and it drowns out all the other noise, the traffic, the dog, the kid, all the rest of the stuff that goes on in my life, and it gets me to focus on what I need to focus on, which is trying to be funny. It's probably doing all of that. But I do that right there.
I would say I find my flow state in the groove, and so that starts with music for me. It's a very big place of inspiration for me. So if it's not jazz, it's soul music. Bill Withers is a huge muse for me. Something about that classic bass line, even some of that old like Jackson 5 and some of those Jackson's records, that's where my brain can really like do the stuff.
One more question? Mr.
Yeah,
Terry Kearns.
What are the mysteries of Atlanta that make this such a great place? And what are you guys doing about it?
What are the mysteries of Atlanta that make this such a great place? I'll say as a poet, we have a really diverse and depthful poetry scene here. It's a group of very diverse poets, all sorts of fashion choices and lifestyles and faith and no faith and cultural background, and that all of us can gather in a room together and listen to each other, to me. That speaks of some of the history even of our city, that we find ways, even when times are hard, to come together.
For me, one of the mysteries has been how to get a Southern crowd, and I grew up in Snellville, if you know where that is, how to get a Southern crowd in to come see theater. That has been the mystery. How do you get them to come in to the city, the big city, and see theater has been the mystery. And for us, it has been consistently doing the best shows anywhere in the Southeast. You do it better than anybody else. And our shows change. That's one of the things that I started doing is if we're in a show and we're doing it and it's not going well, or there's a part that's not being read well consistently over and over and over, that's not a fault of our audience. That's a fault of my writing, someone else's writing, or someone else's part in the show that I've directed completely wrong. And we change it. It will be, if you came Wednesday to see the show and there wasn't a part that was working, Thursday it is changed and back up. And I rely on our writers to change it during the show, a 3-month long run. I rely on our actors to feel like this can be better, and I'll tell you what's going to happen here. So constantly changing, constantly improving until it's the best thing that it can be. And that is up till the closing night of the show. We might be adding stuff each particular time. Never be satisfied with what it is. What it can be, you can always shoot for more. That's how I work.
I think when you talk to people that talk about New York, San Francisco, LA, and they compare Atlanta, the thing that I don't hear that we always talk about, for one, is diversity of thought, that kind of thing. I would have answered the same way if it hadn't already been beautifully stated. In an elevator factory, we have a really good representation of that. And but what I really always talk about is that you can make friends and keep them for a long time in Atlanta. So I have like really deep friendships with people in Atlanta. All those other places, I have friends there, but all those people that are there talk about like, yeah, it's really hard to meet people. It's like, oh, that sucks, you know, because Atlanta's rad for that. So that's what I always say about Atlanta. And what am I doing about it? We've got that elevator factory is really a community. It really has a great vibe, feels great in there. And then we have talks, and we talk about all kinds of things. We have salons and charrettes and that kind of thing. We have one whole kind of track that's just called Difficult Topics, which is great. And we focus on personal wellness, individual wellness, all that kind of thing. So anyway, friendship. I think that's cool in Atlanta.
All right, let's give them a round of applause.